I, 28F, held my newborn son, Leo, in my arms. The hospital room felt small and stuffy, filled with the scent of antiseptic and flowers. My husband, Mark, 30M, stood by my side, his hand resting on my shoulder. He had a smile on his face that looked tired but happy. My own mother, Helen, sat in the chair by the window. She had been quiet for a while, just watching us. Then she leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Leo's tiny face. "He looks nothing like him," she said. The words hung in the air. They were not mean. They were just a simple observation, but the effect was immediate. Mark's hand tightened on my shoulder. His smile vanished. I looked up at him and saw the color drain from his face. He looked pale, almost sick. It was a strange reaction to such a simple comment. Most people would have laughed it off or disagreed. Mark looked terrified. "Mom, what a strange thing to say," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I'm just saying," she replied, not seeming to notice the sudden tension. "He's beautiful, Clara. Absolutely perfect. But there's no mark in that face. Not a bit." I looked down at Leo. He was sleeping, his little chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. He had a full head of dark hair, much darker than Mark's sandy brown. His nose was small and button-like. I had spent hours just staring at him, trying to see who he resembled. I saw a little of me in his chin, maybe. But my mother was right. There was nothing of Mark there. "Well, babies change," I said, looking back at Mark. I expected him to agree, to make a joke. He just swallowed hard. "Yeah," he whispered. His voice was hoarse. "They change." He removed his hand from my shoulder and walked over to the other side of the room, pretending to look at the cards on the windowsill. His back was to us. I could see the stiffness in his posture. My mom finally seemed to realize something was wrong. "Did I say something I shouldn't have?" she asked me in a low voice. "I don't know," I whispered back. "He's just tired, I guess." But I knew it was more than that. I had known Mark for 7 years. I had never seen him react like this. He was usually so easygoing, so quick to laugh. The man standing by the window was a stranger. A deep, cold feeling started to spread in my chest. It felt like a tiny crack in something I had always believed was solid. The nurse came in then, bustling and cheerful. She checked my blood pressure and asked how I was feeling. Mark turned around, forcing another smile that didn't reach his eyes. He answered her questions for me, his voice overly bright. He was performing. He was trying to pretend that nothing had happened. My mom stood up to leave. She hugged me carefully, avoiding my sore middle. "He really is a treasure, Clara," she said softly, kissing my forehead. "Don't mind my rambling." "It's okay, Mom," I told her. I tried to sound convincing. She gave Mark a quick, uncertain hug on her way out. He barely responded. The moment the door clicked shut behind her, the fake cheerfulness fell away from him. He sank into the chair my mother had just left. He put his head in his hands. "Mark, what is wrong?" I asked. My voice was gentle, but firm. I needed to know. He didn't look at me. "Nothing," he mumbled into his palms. "I'm just exhausted. It's been a long few days." "No," I said. "It's more than that. It was what my mom said." "Why did that upset you so much?" He finally looked up. His eyes were wide and haunted. "It didn't upset me," he said. The lie was so obvious it was almost insulting. "Mark, you turned white as a sheet," I pressed. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Talk to me." He stood up and started pacing the small room. "Your mom shouldn't say things like that," he said, his voice gaining an edge of anger. "It's rude. It's inappropriate." "It was an observation," I countered. "A little clumsy, maybe, but not malicious. She loves him. She loves you. Why would that simple sentence break you?" He stopped pacing and stared at me. For a second, I thought he was going to tell me. I saw something flicker in his eyes, a desperate need to confess. Then it was gone, replaced by a wall. "I'm not broken," he snapped. "I'm tired. Can we please just drop it? I want to enjoy this. I want to enjoy our son." His words were meant to make me feel guilty, and they worked. I felt a flush of shame. Maybe I was pushing too hard. He was right. We were both exhausted. We had a new baby. This was supposed to be a happy time. "Okay," I said softly. "Okay, Mark. I'm sorry." He came over and kissed the top of my head. "I'm sorry too," he said. I didn't mean to snap. But as he held me, I could feel the tension still humming through him. He was holding me, but he was a million miles away. I looked down at Leo again, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm his little face had caused. My mother's words echoed in my head. "He looks nothing like him." And for the first time, I felt a flicker of fear. The next few days in the hospital passed in a blur of feeding, changing, and sleeping in short bursts. Mark was attentive. He brought me food. He changed Leo's diapers. He talked to the nurses. He did all the things a new father was supposed to do, but the distance was still there. It was like a thin sheet of glass between us. I could see him, but I couldn't quite reach him. His mother, Diane, came to visit. She was a woman who always seemed perfectly put together. Her hair was always styled, her clothes were always expensive, and her smile never quite seemed genuine. She swept into the room carrying an enormous gift basket. "There's my grandbaby," she exclaimed, her voice a little too loud. She peered into the bassinet where Leo was sleeping. I watched her face carefully. I was waiting for her to say something about his appearance. "Oh, he's so tiny," she said. She reached out a manicured finger and touched his cheek. "And so much hair. Where did he get all that dark hair?" I glanced at Mark. He was standing rigidly by the door, his hands shoved in his pockets. "I had dark hair when I was a baby," I said. It was true. My baby pictures showed a little girl with a shock of black fuzz. Diane hummed, a non-committal sound. "I suppose," she said. She looked from Leo to Mark, then back to Leo. "Well, I'm sure he'll start to look more like the family as he gets older." The family. She meant her family. The implication was clear. Right now, he didn't belong. Mark cleared his throat. "Mom, we're really tired," he said. "Maybe you could keep it short." It was the first time he had ever been anything but perfectly deferential to his mother in my presence. Diane's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. "Of course, dear," she said, her tone syrupy sweet. "I just wanted to see my grandson and drop this off." She patted the gift basket. "I'll let you two get your rest." She kissed Mark's cheek, completely ignored me, and glided out of the room. The air she left behind felt heavy and cold. "Your mom is something else," I said, trying to make it a joke. Mark didn't smile. He just nodded. "Yeah," he said. "She is." That night, after the last nurse had made her rounds, I lay awake in the dark. Mark was asleep in the uncomfortable recliner, his breathing soft and even. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the conversations. My mother's innocent comment, Mark's panicked reaction, Diane's pointed remarks. It all felt connected, like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't see the shape of. I was a logical person. I liked things to make sense. And this didn't make sense. There had to be a reason for Mark's fear. There had to be a reason Diane was so focused on who our son looked like. People didn't act this way without a cause. I thought back to the moment my mom spoke. Mark hadn't just been upset. He had been terrified. It was a primal fear, the kind you see in an animal that's been cornered. What could possibly scare him so much about his own son's face? The most obvious, terrible answer floated into my mind, the one that every new mother fears. Was he thinking that Leo wasn't his? The thought was so absurd, so insulting, that I almost laughed out loud. I had never been unfaithful. Not once. Our relationship was built on trust, or so I had believed. But if he thought that, why? There was no evidence, no reason for suspicion. Unless the suspicion wasn't about me, unless it was about him. The thought was even crazier. I pushed it away. It was the exhaustion talking. It was the hormones. I was just being paranoid. I needed to sleep. I closed my eyes and tried to force my mind to go blank. But the image of Mark's pale, terrified face was burned onto the back of my eyelids. We brought Leo home 2 days later. Our small apartment felt huge and quiet after the constant noise of the hospital. Mark seemed to relax a little once we were in our own space. He helped me set up the bassinet in our bedroom. He made me tea. He held Leo and rocked him when he cried. He was trying. I could see him trying so hard to be the man he was before. But the crack was still there. I could feel it every time he looked at Leo for just a second too long. I could hear it in the forced cheerfulness of his voice. He was holding his breath, waiting for something. The first week was a whirlwind. I barely had time to think about anything beyond the next feeding, the next diaper change. I was exhausted in a way I had never known was possible. But even through the fog of fatigue, I was watching Mark. And I was noticing things. He avoided looking at Leo directly when other people were around. When his father, George, came to visit, Mark held Leo facing away from him. George was a quiet, kind man, the complete opposite of Diane. He beamed at his grandson, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "He's a fine boy, Clara," George said, patting my arm. "You two did a good job." "Thanks, George," I said, smiling. "Let me see his face," George said to Mark. "Don't be shy with him." Mark reluctantly turned Leo around. George studied the baby's face with a gentle expression. "He's got your chin, Clara, but I don't know where that hair comes from. Must be your side of the family." I saw Mark flinch. It was a tiny movement, but I saw it. He was like a raw nerve. Any mention of Leo's appearance was like a poke to a wound. Later that evening, after George had left, I tried to talk to Mark again. I waited until we were in bed, the apartment dark and quiet except for Leo's soft snores from the bassinet. "Mark?" I began, my voice barely a whisper. "We need to talk about this. I can't keep pretending I don't see it." He sighed, a long, weary sound in the darkness. "Clara, please." "No," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I'm your wife. We just had a baby, and you are acting like a ghost in our home. I deserve to know why. Did my mother's comment really get to you that much? Do you honestly have some doubt about him being yours?" The question hung between us, ugly and painful. I had to ask it. I had to know. He was silent for a long time. I could hear the clock ticking on the nightstand. Finally, he spoke, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't identify. "No, Clara," he said. "I have never, not for 1 second, doubted you. I know he is my son." I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. The relief was immense, but it was followed immediately by more confusion. "Then what is it?" I asked. "Help me understand, because I'm scared, Mark. You're scaring me." He rolled over to face me. I could just make out the shape of him in the dim light from the street lamp outside. "It's my mother," he said. "It's always my mother." "Diane? What does she have to do with this?" I asked. She has ideas in her head," he said, struggling for the words. "She likes things to be a certain way. She has this image of our family, of her perfect son and her perfect grandchild. And when things don't fit that image, she gets upset." I finished for him. "I've seen that. But this is more than that. This isn't just her being difficult. This is terror, Mark. I saw it on your face." "You're exaggerating," he said, his voice turning defensive again. "You're tired and hormonal. You're not seeing things clearly." And just like that, the wall was back up. He was using my exhaustion, my postpartum state, against me. He was gaslighting me. The small amount of trust I had regained shattered. "Do not do that," I said, my voice cold and sharp. "Do not use our son and my exhaustion as an excuse to hide from me. I am not crazy. I am not hormonal. I am your wife watching her husband fall apart, and you are treating me like a child." He didn't answer. He just rolled away from me again, presenting me with his back. It was a clear dismissal. The conversation was over. I lay there in the dark, my heart pounding with anger and hurt. He knew something. A secret so big and so terrible that he couldn't even share it with me. A secret that was tied to our son, to his mother, and to this strange obsession with family resemblance. I made a decision in that moment. If he wouldn't tell me the truth, I would find it myself. I would not live in a house with a ghost. I would not raise my son in a family built on a secret that was tearing his father apart. I would find out what Mark was so afraid of, and I would deal with it. Whatever it was. My investigation started small. I began paying closer attention to every interaction, every phone call. Mark was careful, but he was also distracted and worn down. He was making mistakes. A few days later, I was in the living room feeding Leo when Mark's phone rang. He was in the shower. I glanced at the caller ID. It was Diane. I normally would have ignored it, but my new resolve pushed me to act. I answered it. "Mark?" Diane's voice was sharp. "Did you talk to him yet?" My blood ran cold. "It's Clara," I said, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. "Mark's in the shower." There was a split second of silence on the other end. "Oh," she said. Her tone shifted instantly, becoming syrupy again. "Clara, dear, how are you? How is my precious grandbaby?" "We're fine," I said. "Who did you want Mark to talk to?" I was being direct. I wanted to see how she would react. She laughed, a brittle fake sound. "Oh, it was just about a family thing. A cousin's birthday. Nothing important. I'll just call him back later." "Okay," I said. "I'll tell him you called." I hung up. My hand was trembling slightly. "Did you talk to him yet? Who was him? And what did they need to talk about?" It was clear she hadn't wanted me to hear that. This was my first real clue. It wasn't just about her ideas. There was an action involved, a conversation that needed to happen. When Mark got out of the shower, I decided to test him. "Your mom called," I said casually. "Oh? What did she want?" he asked. He was toweling his hair, not looking at me. "She said it was about a cousin's birthday," I replied, watching him closely. He paused for a fraction of a second. "Right. Okay." He didn't ask which cousin. He didn't ask any details. He just accepted it. Because he knew it was a lie. He was in on it. Whatever it was. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I waited until Mark was sound asleep, his exhaustion finally claiming him completely. I slipped out of bed and went to the living room. His phone was on the coffee table. My heart was pounding. I had never gone through his phone before. It felt like a massive violation of trust. But he had already violated my trust by hiding this from me. My hands shook as I picked it up. I knew his passcode. It was our anniversary. I swiped it in and the screen lit up. I went straight to his call log. I saw Diane's call from earlier. Then I went to his messages. I scrolled through his texts with his mother. It was mostly normal stuff. "Can you pick up milk? How's the baby?" But then I saw a message from the day after Leo was born. The day after my mother's comment. It was from Diane. "You need to handle this. Now." Mark's reply was just one word. "I know." Handle what? My mind raced. What had happened that day that needed to be handled? The only thing that had happened was my mother saying Leo didn't look like Mark. I kept scrolling. There were no more texts about it. They must have switched to phone calls. They were being careful, but they had slipped up. This one text was proof that there was a conspiracy between them, a problem that I was not a part of. I put the phone back on the table, exactly where I had found it. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring into the darkness, the pieces of the puzzle starting to connect in my mind. My mother's comment wasn't the problem. It was a symptom of the problem. The real problem was that Leo, for some reason, did not look like he was supposed to. And Diane was terrified of what that meant. And Mark was terrified of his mother. I needed to talk to someone. I couldn't carry this alone anymore. The next morning, I called my best friend, Sarah. "I need to see you," I said, my voice low so Mark wouldn't overhear from the other room. "Can you come over?" "You sound serious," Sarah said. "Is everything okay? Is the baby okay?" "Leo is fine," I said. "It's Mark and his mother. Something is wrong." Sarah was at my apartment within the hour. She was one of those friends who just showed up, no questions asked. She brought coffee and a bag of pastries. She took one look at my face and her cheerful expression turned to one of concern. "Okay, spill," she said, after giving me a long hug. I told her everything. I started with my mom's comment in the hospital. I described Mark's pale face, his fear. I told her about Diane's visit, her pointed words about Leo's hair. I told her about the phone call I intercepted and the text message I found. Sarah listened patiently, holding Leo while I talked. When I was finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Wow," she said finally. "That is a lot." "Am I crazy?" I asked. "Am I just a tired new mom who is blowing things out of proportion?" "No," Sarah said firmly. "You are not crazy. Mark's reaction is not normal. Diane's behavior is not normal. That text message is a giant red flag. You are right to be worried." Hearing her say it, hearing the validation in her voice was like a weight lifting off my chest. I wasn't imagining it. "So what do you think it is?" I asked. Sarah frowned, rocking Leo gently. "Honestly, Clara, I have no idea. The obvious answer is that he's worried you had an affair, but you said you already asked him that and he denied it. And you trust him on that?" "I do," I said. When he said he knew Leo was his, I believed him. It was the only moment of honesty I've had from him in weeks. "Okay," she said. "So if it's not about you, then it has to be about him. Or his family. You said your mom's comment was that Leo looks nothing like Mark. Who does he look like?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I've been staring at him for weeks. He doesn't look like me, really. He just looks like a baby." "Maybe your mom saw a resemblance to someone else?" Sarah suggested. "Someone from his family that you don't know well." That was a good point. My mom had met Mark's extended family only once or twice at our wedding. I, on the other hand, had been to countless holidays and birthdays. I knew the cast of characters. "Maybe," I said, thinking. "But who? And why would that be a secret?" "Secrets are always about shame," Sarah said wisely. "Money, affairs, crime, the big three. You need to figure out who your mom was thinking of." She was right. My mother was the key. She had started this whole thing. I needed to talk to her again, but carefully. I couldn't let her know the chaos her simple words had caused. I didn't want to worry her. "I'll call her," I said. "I'll try to be casual about it." "Good," Sarah said. "And in the meantime, you need to find more evidence. That one text is good, but it's not enough. You need something concrete. Something you can confront them with that they can't deny or explain away." "But where do I look?" I asked, feeling overwhelmed. "Old photos," Sarah suggested immediately. "Yearbooks, family albums, anything that shows you the faces of Mark's extended family. If there's a resemblance, you'll see it." Diane is a woman who cares about appearances. I bet she has albums full of them. That was a brilliant idea. Diane's house was like a museum of her own family. There were framed photos on every surface, and I knew she kept old albums in the study. "The next time we go over there," I said, a plan forming in my mind. I'll find a way to get into that study. Be careful, Clara, Sarah warned. You're dealing with a dragon, and Mark is her little pet. I know, I said, my voice hard. But this is my son, and my life. I'm done being scared. That afternoon, I called my mom. I tried to sound cheerful and relaxed. I asked her about her week, about her garden. Then, as casually as I could, I brought it up. Hey, Mom, I said. I was thinking about that funny thing you said in the hospital. About Leo not looking like Mark. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry if that was weird, she said immediately. I didn't mean anything by it. I know, I said quickly. It's fine. I was just curious. You looked like you recognized him from somewhere. Did he remind you of someone? There was a pause. Well, she said slowly, it's probably nothing. It was just a fleeting thought. You know how faces can sometimes just remind you of other faces? Humor me. I pressed gently. Who did you think of? She hesitated. I probably shouldn't say. It's not my place. Mom, please, I said. It's just between us. I'm just curious. I heard her sigh on the other end of the line. All right, but you have to promise you won't make a big deal out of it. It was at your wedding. I was talking to one of Mark's aunts, and she was showing me pictures on her phone. Pictures of her side of the family. And there was this one man, a nephew, I think she said. He had the same dark hair and the same shape to his eyes. The resemblance was striking. My heart started to beat faster. A nephew? Do you remember his name? Oh, heavens, no, she said. It was a chaotic day, but I remember the aunt said he was the black sheep of the family, that he'd caused a lot of trouble years ago. They didn't talk to him anymore. The black sheep, an estranged relative. This was it. This was the connection. What kind of trouble? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't say exactly, my mom replied. Just that it was a big scandal. I got the impression it was something to do with a woman. I felt a chill go down my spine. Okay, Mom, thanks. That's interesting. Don't go starting drama, Clara, she warned. I won't, I lied. I was just curious. Love you. I hung up the phone. My mind was spinning. A nephew, an estranged relative, a scandal. And my son looked just like him. Now I knew what I was looking for. I didn't just need to get into Diane's study. I needed to find a picture of this mystery man. I needed to see his face for myself. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Diane called a few days later to announce a family dinner. It was George's birthday. Just a small gathering, she'd said. Family only. Her voice had been tight, strained. I knew this wasn't just a birthday dinner. This was a command performance. She wanted to see us. She wanted to observe. Mark didn't want to go. Can't we just say Leo is sick? He'd pleaded. No, I said firmly. We can't hide forever. Your father would be hurt if we missed his birthday. We're going. He had looked at me, a desperate, hunted look in his eyes. He knew I was right, but he was terrified. His fear only strengthened my resolve. I had to end this. We arrived at their house on Sunday evening. It was a large, immaculate colonial that always felt more like a showroom than a home. Diane greeted us at the door, her smile painted on. She immediately took Leo from my arms. Let Grandma have him, she cooed. You must be so tired. She held him up, examining his face in the light of the entryway. I saw her jaw tighten for a split second. He's getting bigger, was all she said. George came out of the living room, his face lighting up when he saw us. There's the birthday boy, he said, looking at Leo. Not himself. He gave me a warm hug. I'm so glad you came. Mark's other relatives were already there. His aunt and uncle, and a couple of cousins. The air was thick with polite, meaningless chatter. I knew my window of opportunity would be small. During dinner, I made my move. I accidentally spilled a little water on my blouse. Oh, clumsy me, I said, standing up. I'm just going to go rinse this off. Use the powder room, dear, Diane said, pointing down the hall. Actually, I think I might need a little club soda, I said. Do you mind if I use the kitchen sink? I don't want it to stain. It was a weak excuse, but it was the best I could come up with. The kitchen was right next to the study. Fine, fine, Diane said, waving a dismissive hand. She was too busy trying to get Leo to smile at her. I walked down the hall, my heart pounding. I could hear the murmur of conversation from the dining room behind me. I slipped into the kitchen, ran the tap for a few seconds to make it sound like I was busy, then tiptoed to the door of the study. It was closed. I held my breath and turned the knob. It was unlocked. I slipped inside, pulling the door almost shut behind me. The room was just as I remembered it. Dark wood, leather-bound books, and photos everywhere. On the desk, on the mantelpiece, on the walls. A shrine to the perfect family. I started scanning the faces, looking for someone who didn't fit. My eyes landed on a large, silver-framed photo on the mantel. It was a family portrait, taken maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Mark was a teenager, all awkward limbs and braces. Diane and George stood behind him, their hands on his shoulders. And standing next to them were Diane's sister, Caroline, her husband, and their son. The son. He looked to be a few years older than Mark. He had a rebellious smirk on his face and dark, unruly hair. His eyes had the same shape as Leo's. My breath caught in my throat. This was him. This had to be him. I looked closer. There was a definite resemblance. It wasn't exact, not a carbon copy, but the features were there. The hair, the eyes, the line of the jaw. It was like looking at a ghost of my son's face, 20 years in the future. I needed proof. I needed his name. I carefully picked up the frame. There was no label on the front. I turned it over. On the back, written in Diane's neat looping script, was a date and a short inscription. Family Christmas 2005. Before the trouble. Before the trouble. My mother's words came back to me. The black sheep. The scandal. I looked around the room, frantic now. Where would she keep the old albums? I saw a large built-in bookshelf. On the bottom shelf, tucked away behind a set of encyclopedias, were several thick, leather-bound albums. I pulled one out. It was heavy. The cover said 1990-1995. I flipped it open. Page after page of smiling faces. Mark as a little boy. Birthday parties, vacations, school plays. And there he was again. The dark-haired boy. Always a little off to the side, never quite part of the main group. Under one picture, a school photo, was a name. Robert. Age 10. Robert. That was his name. I kept flipping. I found another album, 1995 to 2000. Robert was a teenager now. The rebellious smirk was more pronounced. In most of the photos, he was standing near Diane. In one, his arm was slung casually around her shoulders. They were laughing. It looked intimate. Too intimate for an aunt and nephew. A horrible, sickening idea began to form in my mind. An idea so monstrous I couldn't even fully articulate it. I heard footsteps in the hall. My blood ran cold. I shoved the album back onto the shelf, my hands fumbling. I fixed the encyclopedia set and stood up, trying to compose myself. The door creaked open. It was Mark. He stood in the doorway, his face pale and drawn. He saw the photo frame in my hands. His eyes widened in horror. "Clara," he whispered. "What are you doing?" "I'm finding out the truth," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of fear and rage. "Since you won't tell me." I held up the photo. "Who is this, Mark?" "Who is Robert?" He wouldn't look at it. He just stared at my face, his expression pleading. "Please," he begged. "Not here, not now. Just put it back. We can talk at home." "No," I said. "We're done with that. We're done with you hiding. You're going to tell me what is going on. You're going to tell me why our son looks like this man. And you're going to tell me right now." His face crumpled. The fight went out of him completely. He looked utterly defeated. "You don't understand," he whispered. "It will destroy everything." "Your secret is already destroying everything," I shot back. "It's destroying you and it's destroying us." I could hear Diane's voice from the dining room, getting closer. "Mark? Clara? Is everything all right?" Mark looked over his shoulder in panic. "Please, Clara," he hissed. "For me. Just put it back. I promise. I will tell you everything tonight." I looked at his desperate face. I looked at the photo in my hand. I thought about the family in the other room, eating cake and celebrating a life that might be built on a lie. I made a split-second decision. This wasn't the time or the place. A public confrontation would be messy and chaotic. I needed control. I needed to have all the facts before I acted. "Fine," I said, my voice like ice. "Tonight. But if you try to lie to me or put me off again, I swear to you, Mark, I will burn this entire family to the ground." I placed the photo frame back on the mantel, my hand perfectly steady. I walked past him and out of the study, not giving him a second glance. I went back to the dining room, a polite smile fixed on my face. Diane looked at me suspiciously. "Did you get the stain out?" she asked. "Yes, thank you," I said sweetly. The club soda worked wonders. The rest of the dinner was torture. I sat there, smiling and making small talk, while my world tilted on its axis. I held Leo, and every time I looked at his face, I saw the ghost of Robert, the boy with the dark hair and the rebellious smirk. Mark was a wreck. He barely spoke a word. He just pushed food around his plate. George tried to draw him into conversation, but he just grunted non-committal replies. Even Diane seemed to notice. She kept shooting him sharp, angry looks from across the table. We finally left around 9. The car ride home was silent. The air was so thick with unspoken words it felt hard to breathe. Mark drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I just stared out the window, watching the streetlights flash by. As soon as we walked through our apartment door, I turned on him. "All right," I said, not even bothering to take off my coat. "We're home. Start talking." I put the sleeping Leo down in his bassinet in the bedroom and closed the door. When I came back out, Mark was standing in the middle of the living room, looking lost. He took a deep breath. "This is going to be hard to hear, Clara." "I'm sure it is," I said coldly. "It's been hard living it." He sank onto the sofa. He looked old, worn down. "Robert is my cousin, my mom's sister's son." "I know that," I said. "I also know he's the family's black sheep, that there was a scandal, and that my son looks exactly like him. Connect the dots for me, Mark." He winced at my harsh tone. "When I was in high school," he began, his voice low and shaky, "Robert came to live with us for a while. His parents were having problems. He was troubled, but he was also charming, charismatic. Everyone was drawn to him." He paused, swallowing hard. "My mother, especially." The monstrous idea from the study came rushing back, and this time I couldn't push it away. My stomach churned. "What are you saying, Mark?" He wouldn't look at me. He just stared at his hands. "They had an affair," he whispered. The words were so quiet I almost didn't hear them. "My mother, and her nephew." The room spun. I had to sit down. I sank into the armchair opposite him, my mind reeling. Diane and her own nephew. It was disgusting. It was a secret big enough to warrant this level of fear. "And you knew?" I asked, my voice a strangled whisper. "You knew about this?" He nodded, shamefaced. "I found out by accident. I overheard them. I was 16. It broke me. I confronted my mom. She admitted it. She begged me not to tell my dad. She said it would destroy him. She said it was a mistake. that she was lonely, that Robert had taken advantage of her. And you believed her? I asked, incredulous. I was a kid, he cried, finally looking at me, his eyes filled with pain. She was my mom. I wanted to believe her, so I kept her secret. We never spoke of it again. Robert was sent away. His parents eventually divorced. The whole family just pretended he never existed. It was all starting to make sense. The shame, the secrecy. But there was still a missing piece. What does any of this have to do with Leo? I asked. Why does his resemblance to Robert terrify you and your mother so much? This was the question, the one that had been tormenting me for weeks. Mark's face crumpled again. He looked like he was about to be physically sick. Because, he choked out, the words tearing from his throat. There's more. More? I whispered, dread coiling in my stomach. He took a ragged breath. The affair. It wasn't just an affair, it was before. Years before Robert came to live with us. It started when my mom was younger, when Robert was just a teenager. And it wasn't a one-time thing. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for me to understand, to forgive him for the story he was about to tell. Clara, he said, his voice cracking. George, the man I've called my father my entire life. He's not my biological father. The world stopped. The ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic, it all faded away. There was only Mark's voice hanging in the silence. Robert, he whispered, the name like a curse. Robert is my biological father. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just stared at him, my mind trying to process the impossible. Mark's father was his cousin. His mother had a baby with her own nephew. The secret wasn't just about an affair. The secret was Mark himself. His entire existence was the scandal. And my mother, he continued, his voice flat and dead, has spent the last 30 years of her life terrified that someone would find out, that George would find out. She built this perfect life, this perfect family, on top of this giant, horrible lie. And she made me her co-conspirator. Now I understood the fear. It wasn't just fear of a family scandal. It was the fear of total annihilation. If George found out, Diane's entire world would crumble. She would lose her husband, her home, her status, everything she valued. And Leo, I said, the final piece clicking into place. My voice was hollow. My son. He has the family resemblance, the one you were supposed to have, but don't. He looks like your father. Your real father. Mark nodded, tears streaming down his face now. He's the proof, he whispered. He's the walking, breathing proof of her lie. When your mom said he looked nothing like me, my mother heard the truth. That he looks like a man she has spent a lifetime trying to erase. And she panicked. She's been panicking ever since. The text message. You need to handle this. Now. What did she want you to handle? I asked. My voice dangerously quiet. He flinched. She wanted me to talk to you. To manage you. To make sure you didn't get suspicious. To plant seeds of doubt about Leo's appearance. To say he looked like some distant relative on your side. Anything to throw you off the scent. Rage, cold and pure, washed over me. They had been trying to manipulate me. To use me as a pawn in their disgusting game. Diane hadn't just been protecting her secret. She had been willing to cast suspicion on me, on my fidelity to do it. And the phone call I answered? I pressed. Did you talk to him yet? Who was him? Mark looked down, ashamed. George, he mumbled. She was worried George was starting to notice the resemblance too. He'd made a few comments. She wanted me to talk to him, to reinforce the lie. To say Leo looked just like my baby pictures. The audacity of it was breathtaking. She was using her own son to lie to the man she had been betraying for over 30 years. I stood up. I felt strangely calm. The shock and the horror had burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard certainty. "I see," I said. Mark looked up at me, his face hopeful. "You see? Do you understand why I couldn't tell you?" "Oh, I understand," I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. "I understand that you have been lying to me since the day our son was born. I understand that you chose your mother's disgusting secret over your own wife and child. I understand that you stood by while she planned to insinuate that I had been unfaithful, just to save her own skin." His face fell. "Clara, no, it wasn't like that. I was trapped." "You were not trapped, Mark," I said, the words sharp as glass. "You made a choice. You chose her. You chose the lie. And you left me in the dark, scared and alone, thinking I was going crazy." I walked over to the bedroom door. "I need some time to think," I said. "You can sleep on the sofa." "Clara, wait," he begged, standing up. "We can fix this. I can fix this." "Can you?" I asked, turning to face him one last time. "Can you change the fact that your entire life is a lie? Can you change the fact that you let your mother control you like a puppet? Can you change the fact that you broke my trust?" He had no answer. He just stood there, helpless and broken. "I didn't think so," I said. I went into the bedroom and closed the door, locking it behind me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the rocking chair, holding Leo, my son, the innocent catalyst for this entire disaster. I looked at his perfect tiny face, the dark hair, the shape of his eyes. I wasn't just seeing Robert anymore. I was seeing the truth. The anger was a fire in my chest. Anger at Mark for his weakness. Anger at Diane for her selfishness and cruelty. She was willing to sacrifice anyone and anything to protect herself. She was a monster hiding in a pristine suburban house. But underneath the anger, a plan began to form. A cold, clear, and ruthless plan. They thought I was a problem to be handled. They thought they could manage me. They had underestimated me. Diane's greatest fear was the truth coming out. She had built her life on a foundation of lies, and she was terrified of it all coming crashing down. Mark was her accomplice. Trapped by a secret he had kept since he was a boy. They had left me with two choices. I could let this secret fester, let it poison my marriage and my family forever. Or I could do what they were too cowardly to do. I could bring the truth into the light. Diane wanted a war. She just didn't know I was the one who was about to start it. And I had the perfect weapon. The truth. The next morning, I was a different person. The hurt, confused wife was gone. In her place was someone with a purpose. I was polite but distant with Mark. He tried to talk to me, to apologize again, but I cut him off. "I don't want to talk about it right now, Mark," I said calmly. "I need to think." His face fell, but he didn't push. He looked scared of me, and for the first time, that felt right. He should be scared. I called Sarah. "I know everything," I said, as soon as she answered. "Everything?" she asked. "Everything," I confirmed. I told her the whole sordid story. The affair, the nephew, the fact that Robert was Mark's real father. There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Oh my God, Clara," she finally breathed. I have no words. That is the most messed up thing I have ever heard." "Tell me about it," I said dryly. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Are you leaving him?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "Right now, my focus is on Diane. She's the one who created this mess. She's the one who was willing to throw me under the bus to protect it. She needs to face the consequences." "So you're going to tell George?" Sarah asked, her voice a mix of awe and apprehension. "I am," I said, "but not yet. I need more than just Mark's panicked confession. Diane will deny everything. She'll say Mark is confused, that I'm a liar trying to break up the family. I need irrefutable proof. But what proof could there be after all this time? Sarah asked. I don't know, I said. But I'm going to find it. Diane has been hiding this for 30 years. There has to be a paper trail somewhere. A letter, a diary, something. People like her, they're arrogant. They think they can't be caught. They get sentimental. They keep things. My mind went back to the study, to the albums, the photos. There had to be more in that house. I need to get back in there, I said. Alone. How are you going to manage that? Sarah asked. A plan was already forming in my mind. It was risky, but it was the only way. I'm going to use their own tactics against them, I said. I'm going to play the part of the dutiful, apologetic daughter-in-law. That evening, I approached Mark. I had softened my expression. I looked tired, sad. Mark, I said softly, I've been thinking, and you were right. You were trapped. I can't imagine what it must have been like to carry that secret for so long. Relief washed over his face. He rushed to my side. Clara, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. It's okay, I said, forcing myself not to recoil from his touch. We need to present a united front. For Leo, and for your dad. He doesn't deserve to be hurt. You're right, he said eagerly. You're absolutely right. What should we do? I think I need to talk to your mother, I said, feigning reluctance. I think I owe her an apology. I was rude at the dinner. I don't want her to be suspicious. We need to get her to lower her guard. Mark looked at me, his eyes full of admiration. You would do that? For me? For us? I'll do whatever it takes to protect our family, I said. The words were true, just not in the way he thought. The next day, I called Diane. Mark was standing right next to me, listening. Diane? I said, my voice humble. It's Clara. I'm calling to apologize. I've been so emotional lately, with the baby and everything. I was completely out of line at dinner the other night. Snooping in your study was unforgivable. There was a pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. Well, she said, her voice still cautious. It was certainly unexpected behavior. I know, I said, injecting a little sob into my voice. I'm so ashamed. I was just feeling so insecure. Mark and I had a long talk. He explained everything, about how much I overreacted. I would love to apologize in person. Maybe I could bring Leo over tomorrow? Just for a little while? This was the bait, an offering of her grandson, her prize. Well, she said again, her tone softening slightly. I suppose that would be all right. George will be out golfing all morning. Perfect. Thank you, Diane, I said. It means a lot. I hung up. Mark hugged me tightly. You were amazing, he said. Thank you. We're a team, I said, smiling a smile that felt like a mask. The next morning, I got ready for my mission. I packed the diaper bag with everything Leo could possibly need. Then I added one extra item, a tiny, high-quality audio recorder that I had ordered online with next-day delivery. It was the size of a keychain. I arrived at Diane's house at 10 o'clock sharp. She opened the door, her expression carefully neutral. Clara, she said. Diane, I replied. I handed her a small bouquet of flowers, a peace offering. She took them, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Thank you. Come in. I followed her into the pristine living room. I put the diaper bag on the floor next to the sofa. Can I get you some coffee? She asked. That would be lovely, thank you, I said. As soon as she left for the kitchen, I sprang into action. I took the audio recorder from the diaper bag, switched it on, and slipped it deep between the sofa cushions. It was a long shot, but if she and Mark ever had a conversation in this room, I might catch something. Diane came back with the coffee. We sat in awkward silence for a few minutes. I held Leo, bouncing him on my knee. "He's a good baby," Diane commented, her eyes on him. "He is," I said. Then I took a deep breath and began my performance. "Diane," I said, looking her in the eye, "I am so sorry. I've been a mess. My mother put these crazy ideas in my head with her comment, and I let my imagination run away with me. It was foolish and paranoid, and I violated your privacy. I hope you can forgive me." She studied my face, searching for any sign of deception. I held her gaze, my expression open and remorseful. "Well," she said, taking a sip of her coffee, "having a baby can make one emotional. I understand." She was accepting my apology. It was working. "I just want us to be a family," I continued, laying it on thick. "I don't want any secrets or weirdness between us." "Of course not," she said smoothly. "There are no secrets." The lie was so bald-faced, so effortless, it made my blood run cold. We chatted for a little while longer, all polite surface-level nonsense. Then I made my next move. "Oh, you know what?" I said, slapping my forehead lightly. "I completely forgot. My mom gave me a box of my old baby things. Photos, my first shoes, that kind of stuff. She thought it would be fun to compare them to Leo's. But I also have some of Mark's baby photos that you gave me. I think I left them in a box in your attic the last time we were sorting through things. Do you mind if I run up and grab them? I'd love to take them home." The attic. It was a long shot, but it was a place people stored things they wanted to forget but couldn't bring themselves to throw away. Diane hesitated. The attic was her private space, full of 30 years of accumulated life. "I can get them for you later," she said. "Oh, please," I said, giving her my most winning smile. "It'll only take me a second. I know exactly where the box is. You stay here with your grandbaby." I stood up and handed Leo to her. It was a calculated risk, giving her what she wanted most. For a moment, she looked torn. Then she looked down at the baby in her arms, and her expression softened. "Oh, all right," she said. "Go on. The light switch is at the top of the stairs." "Thank you," I said, my heart hammering. "I'll be right back." I walked out of the room, my steps measured and calm. But as soon as I was in the hall, I moved quickly. I went up the main staircase, then pulled down the folding ladder to the attic. The air in the attic was hot and smelled of dust and old paper. It was dimly lit by a single bare bulb. Boxes were stacked everywhere. I had no idea where to start. I had lied about knowing where the box was. I had never been in this attic before. I started looking for boxes that looked old, ones that were taped up and pushed to the back. I found a stack of them in a far corner under an old sheet. They were labeled in George's neat, blocky handwriting. Taxes, 1995. Taxes, 1996. Not what I was looking for. I kept searching, my ears strained for any sound from downstairs. I moved another stack of boxes and saw it. Tucked away behind them was a small wooden chest. It wasn't a box. It was a hope chest. It was the kind of thing a young woman would have. It was out of place among all the cardboard. It was locked with a small, simple latch. I looked around frantically. On a nearby shelf, among some old tools, was a thin screwdriver. I grabbed it and went back to the chest. I wedged the tip into the lock and jiggled it. After a few tense seconds, I heard a click. It sprang open. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside, it smelled of cedar and perfume. On top was a stack of old, yellowed letters tied with a faded silk ribbon. I untied the ribbon. The letters were addressed to Diane. The return address was a town I didn't recognize. The handwriting was messy, almost frantic. I unfolded the top letter. The date was from 31 years ago. "My dearest Diane," it began. "I can't stop thinking about you. About what happened. I know it was wrong, but I can't bring myself to regret it. You are everything to me. I count the minutes until I can see you again at Christmas." My eyes scanned down to the signature at the bottom. "All my love, forever, Rob. Rob, Robert." I had found them. The letters, the proof. I didn't have time to read them all. I just needed to take them. I scooped up the entire stack and shoved them into the waistband of my jeans, pulling my loose sweater down over them. I closed the chest, relatched it, and pushed it back into its hiding place. I put the other boxes back in front of it. I made everything look exactly as I had found it. Then I grabbed the first cardboard box I saw. It was labeled Mark, Childhood. It was the box of his baby pictures I had pretended to be looking for. It was the perfect cover. I hurried back down the ladder, my heart pounding with adrenaline. I pushed the ladder back up into the ceiling. I took a deep breath to calm myself, then walked back into the living room holding the box. "Found them," I said with a bright smile. Diane looked up from cooing at Leo. She eyed the box. "Good," she said. "Now you can see for yourself. Leo looks just like Mark did as a baby." "I'm sure he does," I said, my voice sweet as honey. The letters were a heavy, damning weight against my skin. I stayed for another 20 minutes, making polite conversation. It was the hardest acting job of my life. Finally, I said I had to go, that Leo needed his nap. Diane walked me to the door. "It was good to clear the air," she said. "It was," I agreed. "Thank you for being so understanding." I drove home, my hands shaking on the wheel. I had it. I had the proof. The irrefutable, undeniable proof of her affair, written in her lover's own hand. When I got back to my apartment, I put Leo down for his nap. Then I took out the letters and spread them on the dining room table. There were more than 20 of them. I read every single one. They were passionate, desperate, and deeply incriminating. They painted a picture of a long-term secret affair. They talked about secret meetings, about their plans to be together one day. They talked about their fear of being discovered. And then I found the one I was looking for, a letter from a few months after Mark was conceived. "Diane, you can't be serious," Robert had written. "You can't pass him off as George's. It's not right. He's our son. Mine. We have to tell the truth." And then, a few letters later, a reply to a letter of hers that I didn't have. "I understand you're scared. I am too. But a lie this big, it will eat you alive. If you won't tell him, I will. I can't let my son be raised by another man, thinking he's his father." This was it. This was the motive. He had threatened to expose her. That must have been when she cut him off, sent him away, and started the 30-year cover-up. I carefully put the letters into a large envelope. I now had the weapon. All I had to do was choose the time and place to use it. George's birthday party had been a small affair, but I knew that Diane and George hosted a big anniversary party every year in late summer. It was a huge event. All their friends, their family, their business associates. It was the centerpiece of their social calendar. A celebration of their long, perfect marriage. It was the perfect stage for the final act. I spent the next few weeks playing the role of a lifetime. I was the perfect daughter-in-law. I visited Diane with Leo regularly. I listened to her advice. I laughed at her jokes. I let her believe she had won, that she had successfully handled the problem. Mark was relieved. He thought the crisis was over. Our relationship was still strained. The trust was still broken. But he was so grateful that I was playing along that he didn't question anything. He was weak, and I used his weakness. I kept the letters hidden, and I waited. The invitations for the anniversary party arrived. A 40th anniversary. 40 years of a lie. The party was to be held at their country club. It was going to be a grand affair. I looked at the invitation, and I knew. This was the place. This was the time. The night of the party, I got dressed carefully. I chose a simple, elegant dress. I wanted to look calm and confident. In control. Mark put on his suit. He looked nervous. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" he asked me. "All these people?" "I'm fine," I said. "It's your parents' big night. We have to be there to support them." He smiled, a weak, grateful smile. He had no idea what was coming. We arrived at the country club. The ballroom was filled with people in tuxedos and evening gowns. A string quartet was playing in the corner. It was a picture of wealth and success. Diane and George stood near the entrance, greeting their guests. Diane was radiant. She was wearing a silver gown, dripping with diamonds. She looked like the queen of her own perfect kingdom. She saw us, and her face lit up with a genuine smile. She had no idea she was looking at the woman who was about to dethrone her. "Clara, Mark, you made it," she said, kissing the air next to our cheeks. "And where is my handsome grandson?" "He's with a sitter," I said. I didn't think this was the right place for a baby. "Probably for the best," she said, already turning to the next guest. The evening wore on. There were cocktails, dinner, dancing. I moved through the crowd, smiling and chatting. I was a time bomb, ticking away. Finally, it was time for the speeches. Mark's uncle went first, telling a few boring anecdotes about George's golf game. Then it was Mark's turn. He had been dreading it all week. He was supposed to give a toast to his parents, celebrating their love and commitment. The irony was suffocating. He stood up, his hands shaking as he held the microphone. He looked out at the crowd, at his mother's beaming face, at his father's kind one. He began, his voice faltering. "I just want to say, congratulations to my parents. 40 years. That's a long time." He was crumbling. He couldn't do it. He couldn't stand up there and perpetuate the lie. He looked at me, his eyes wide with panic. This was my moment. I stood up and walked to the small stage. I put a gentle hand on his arm. "It's okay," I whispered. "Let me." He looked at me, confused, but he handed me the microphone and stepped back, relieved. I turned to face the crowd. All eyes were on me. The room was silent. "Hello, everyone," I said, my voice clear and steady. "My husband is a little overwhelmed. It's a very emotional night." I smiled at Diane and George. 40 years is an incredible milestone. It's a testament to a love that can withstand anything. A marriage built on trust, honesty, and family. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Diane was beaming. George looked proud. "And speaking of family," I continued, my tone shifting slightly, "I've been thinking a lot about it lately. About what makes a family. About the legacies we pass down. About the resemblances that connect us through generations." I saw a flicker of unease in Diane's eyes. She was starting to sense that this was not the speech she was expecting. "When our son, Leo, was born," I said, my voice still pleasant, "my mother made an offhand comment. She said he didn't look a thing like Mark, but that he looked exactly like someone else in the family, someone she had only seen in a photograph once." The room was dead silent now. Everyone was leaning forward, listening intently. Mark was staring at me in horror. He knew what I was doing. "I was curious," I went on. "So I did a little digging, and I found him. A man named Robert, Diane's nephew, the family's black sheep." Diane's face had gone from beaming to ashen. Her smile was frozen on her face, a grotesque mask. George was looking at her, a confused frown on his face. "Why would my son look so much like a man he's not related to?" I asked, posing the question to the room. It was a puzzle, but then I found the answer. In a dusty chest in Diane's attic. I reached into the small purse I was carrying. I pulled out the envelope of letters. "I found these," I said, holding them up for everyone to see. Letters, love letters, written 31 years ago, from Robert to Diane. A collective gasp went through the room. George's face was a mask of disbelief. He turned to his wife. "Diane?" he whispered. "What is she talking about?" Diane didn't answer. She just stared at me, her eyes filled with a murderous rage. The queen was watching her kingdom burn. "But it wasn't just a simple affair," I said, my voice ringing with clarity. Because these letters confirm something much more shocking. They confirm that Robert wasn't just Diane's lover, he was also the father of her son. I turned and looked directly at Mark, who looked like he was about to faint. Then I looked at George. "George," I said, my voice softening with genuine pity. "Mark is not your biological son. His father is Robert. Your wife has been lying to you for your entire marriage." The silence was broken by a single, strangled sob. It came from Diane. The mask had shattered. Her face was a mess of tears and rage. George just stood there, his face ashen. He looked from me to Diane, to Mark, and back to me. He looked like a man who had been shot. "It's a lie," Diane shrieked, finding her voice. "She's a liar. She's trying to destroy our family." "Am I?" I asked calmly. I walked over to the table where George was standing. I opened the envelope and took out one of the letters. The one where Robert threatened to tell the truth. I handed it to George. "Read it for yourself," I said softly. He took it, his hands trembling. He read the messy handwriting. I saw the moment the truth hit him. The last bit of denial drained from his face, replaced by a look of profound, soul-crushing betrayal. He looked at Diane. He didn't shout. He didn't scream. His voice was quiet, dead. "All this time?" he whispered. "All our lives?" Diane just sobbed, covering her face with her hands. The party was over. People were starting to get up, to leave, whispering amongst themselves. They were fleeing the wreckage. I walked back to Mark. He was staring at the floor, his body shaking. "How could you?" he whispered. "How could you do this?" "I did what you were too afraid to do," I said, my voice hard. I told the truth. "Your mother built a prison of lies and she locked you in it with her. I just opened the door." I turned and walked away from him. I walked out of the ballroom, out of the country club, and into the cool night air. I didn't look back. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic, just as I had known it would be. Sarah called me the next day. Her cousin had been at the party. "It's the only thing anyone is talking about," she said. "Diane is a social pariah. George has apparently already filed for divorce. He's kicking her out of the house." "Good," I said. The single word held a universe of satisfaction. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. It was George. His voice was tired, but calm. "Clara," he said, I wanted to thank you." I was taken aback. "Thank me?" "Yes," he said. "What you did? It was brutal, but it was necessary. I've been living a lie for 40 years. A fool. You opened my eyes. The pain is immense. But the truth, as hard as it is better than the lie." "I'm sorry for the way it happened, George," I said, and I meant it. He was an innocent victim in all of this. "Don't be," he said. "It was the only way she would have ever been forced to face it. She's a master of denial." He paused. "I'm getting a DNA test, for my own peace of mind. But I already know what it will say. I look at pictures of Mark as a baby now, and I see it. I just didn't want to before." Then he said something that surprised me even more. "Mark is still my son. He is the man I raised. That doesn't change. But his relationship with his mother, that is over. And so is mine." We talked for a little while longer. He asked about Leo. He told me he wanted to continue being a grandfather to him. I told him I would like that very much. Mark came to me a few days after that. He had been staying at a hotel. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes. "I've done a lot of thinking," he said, his voice hoarse. "Have you?" I asked, my arms crossed. "Yes," he said. "You were right. About everything. I was a coward. I let her control me. I let her hurt you. I chose the lie because I was terrified of the truth. And I am so, so sorry, Clara. I know sorry isn't enough. I know I broke everything." He looked at me, his eyes full of a pain that was now his own, not just a reflection of his mother's. "I went to see her," he said. "I told her I was done. Done with the lies, done with the secrets, done with her. She tried to manipulate me, to blame you, to blame everyone but herself. And for the first time in my life, I didn't let her. I walked away. This was the man I had been waiting to see. The man who could finally stand on his own 2 feet. "What do you want, Mark?" I asked him. "A second chance," he whispered. "Not for us to go back to the way we were. That's gone. But to build something new, something honest, with you and with our son. If you'll let me." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since that night. The ghost was gone. The fear was gone. He was just a man, flawed and broken, but finally free. "We'll start with therapy," I said. "Both of us, together and separately. And you will earn my trust back day by day. It won't be easy." Tears of relief streamed down his face. "Okay," he said. "Okay, whatever it takes." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The trust was a fragile, shattered thing that we had to piece back together, bit by bit. But it was a beginning, an honest one. Diane was completely cut off. George divorced her, and the settlement was not generous. She lost the house, she lost her social standing, she lost her husband, and she lost her son. She tried to contact me a few times, leaving bitter, rambling voicemails. I never listened to them. I just deleted them. A few months later, I was having coffee with my mom. She looked at Leo, who was now a chubby, happy baby, gurgling in my lap. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "now that I look at him, I can see a little bit of Mark in his smile." I smiled back at her, a real, genuine smile. "Yeah," I said, "I can see it too." The resemblance was still there, the ghost of Robert in his features, but it didn't matter anymore. It was just a face. It had no power. The secret was out. The monster had been dragged into the light, and it had crumbled to dust. We had survived. We were building a new life, a new family. One based not on a perfect image, but on the messy, complicated, and ultimately liberating truth. Diane had tried to make me small, to silence me, to handle me. But in the end, her lies had been her own undoing. She had finally learned what it feels like to have everything taken away. And I had learned that I was stronger than I ever thought possible.